take a minute to give a shout out to the names that you saw on the screen before. Fitbit, GeoPals, Jaybird, Looksee, Polar, Adidas, Aftershocks, Ant Plus, Basis, LG Electronics, Topmo, Reebok, Runtastic, Tao Wellness, Texas Instrument, Withings, iAthlete, Cambridge Consultants, Jawbone, Creos, Fitlinks, Precor, Spark People, Valencell, Zenzorium, Magellan, Wellograph, Life Fitness, MC10, Mayfunk, MetaMonitor, Perfetch, SportsBeat, Wear It, Zamzi. Whew. Every year that list gets longer, and that's good. So hopefully next year we'll get more sponsors and we'll have champagne. So, picking up where we left off a year ago, at last year's conference, we were introduced to Fitbit Flex, GeoPal's iBits, Body Medium's Beautiful Core 2, Happy Fork, Zenzorium's Tink, Checklight by Reebok International with technology by MC10, Scotia's My Rhythm, Mayfunk's Vert, Valencell's very, very cool watch, Aftershock's Bone Conduction earphones. This year, all of those players except for 2 are still here. 8 out of 10, 80%. And they're more relevant, more accurate, more powerful, and more innovative than ever. You guys are not only leading the way, there are many more facts and figures that I'm going to throw around today, and we'll hear about sports and fitness tech industry, all of which only underline the fact that the market has far exceeded the predictions and research that we presented in 2011. Today, we're going to meet new players. We're going to learn what might be in the near future of sports and fitness, and we're going to take a look at wearable tech and address the question of function or fashion. We created a little session on ecosystems. So we have a panel. We challenged our panelists to come up and form a new partnership. Excuse me 1 second. Once a year in the desert is all I can take. While we've gotten closer, we are still going to try and crack the code on kids' fitness. Our speakers, moderators, and panelists are not only thought leaders, they are industry experts, engineers, brainiacs, and creatives that will talk to us about structure, algorithms, and calculations. So maybe even I can understand them. Finally, we're introducing a brand new contest at CES this year called the Battle of the Bands. 6 fitness bands are going to vie for your votes as to whose presentation is the most entertaining and the most informative. It's all in good fun, and I hear there's going to be some giveaways, lots of swag, and we might even throw in an award for the best swag. We're going to wrap up the day with a little drink and some snacks before we head off to see what the rest of CES did today. And just a little FYI, there will be a question and answer period for most of the panels and speakers. We could do it either by hand, mic, tweet. I haven't really decided yet. We're going to figure that out. And feel free to follow us on tagboard.com. It's Fitness Tech CES, and we can tweet events, keynotes, announcements all day long. So, for now, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. If I can find my note, Simon Drabble from Adidas. Simon, what did I do with your introduction? No, let me introduce you. Simon is our pinch hitter today for Stacey Burr. Simon is from Germany. He's had a very long flight here in the snow. Simon Drabble, Vice President, Adidas.
So first thing first, I'll just have a quick drink. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be up here on stage. Not something that I was expecting this morning due to the cold winds that have blown into the North America. Stacey was unable to make it down here. She will be later in the week, but for today, you're going to have to make do with me, and I'm going to try and give you the same kind of speech that Stacey was planning to give from the Adidas perspective. Can we get the slide deck up? Okay, so this morning we're going to be talking about individual coaching for all. My name is Simon Drabble. I'm the Director of Product Creation for Adidas in the MyCoach business unit based in Germany. And I think this is about the fourth or fifth time I've been to CES, and each year as I've been here, this focus on fitness tech and sports tech has continued to grow to a level which continues to amaze, and it's pretty impressive to see that, but it's really the first time that we at Adidas have taken to the stage to give our point of view. And that's probably where I'm going to start off today is basically a little bit about Adidas. Many of you will know the brand, coming from the American side of the pond, probably under the name Adidas. Forgive me, I'm going to use it as Adidas, being from the European side. And you know us most commonly for footwear and apparel. We're not known specifically as a technology brand, but we are a brand that focuses on trying to be a leader in innovation in everything we do. And that goes from footwear to apparel all the way through to digital technologies, where my team is focused at this point in time and for the future. It was a common part of Adidas' strategy from day one. It's the mantra of the brand is that always the best for the athlete. And that's something we constantly talk about internally in terms of trying to drive innovation from footwear, apparel, and a digital perspective. And when we talk about that, achieving the best for the athlete, we're not just talking about the guys that are up here on the slide, Bill Frosby, Muhammad Ali, Jesse Owens, or Stan Smith, guys that had access to Adidas technology when they were in their prime. We're also talking about all levels of athletes. For us at Adidas, anybody that takes part in sports and fitness is an athlete, and we're always trying to provide them with the best tools and equipment to do that. And it's because of our understanding of athletes and the way they train, the way they're actually taking part in competitions, and because of the requirements of their sport, that we have the deep level of understanding about sport that allows us to enter into the space of digital technologies and bring that understanding to the forth. We have a clear understanding of physiology from everything we do with working with our elite teams, our elite assets, and trying to get to the bottom of what it is that can help them get that, let's say, that micro percentage of improvement from the effort that they're putting into sports. And from a digital perspective, from a technology perspective, we then bring that to the fore through what is Adidas MyCoach. I'll come back to a little bit more about what MyCoach is and some of our products a little bit later in the presentation, but what I wanted to move on to now was just a few statements, comments around industry trends which may have happened in recent times or have been something that have been ongoing for a longer period of time, because that's something that then will lead into the position or the philosophy that I want to put out from an Adidas perspective later on in the presentation. So moving on from there, and if we look back through the world of monitoring, and those guys that have been around for as long as 20 to 30 years may remember some of the origins of these technologies. It's arguable as to which one maybe came first or the other, but there's two tracks, definite common tracks, and there's activity monitoring from a simple pedometer perspective, and there's heart rate monitoring. They've been common technologies throughout the life of fitness and sports monitoring that we know today. But individually, they're not the complete picture. And I think it's important to understand that there are limitations to using only a single technology in trying to provide all of the recommendations, the coaching recommendations, and the services and solutions to an athlete, whether it be an elite athlete or a fitness athlete. And because of those limitations, we've moved into an area where we have certain generalizations, and I think from the pedometer, the 10,000 steps is quite applicable. From a heart rate perspective, we have 220 minus age. But because of these limitations, it also puts a challenge on our table in terms of how do we work to give people the best information that can help them to get from where they are today to where they want to be in the future. And we'll come back to this in a little bit more detail later on. But another trend I wanted to point out is also the fact that over time, and this is probably a longer period of time, there has been this move from what was once a tethered scenario where you had to go to a specific environment to speak to a specific expert to get the information you wanted. That's no longer the case today. That we know that. The last 5 years have shown that and how quickly the sports and fitness industry has developed. It's now mobile, and that's not just a term in terms of people are seeing this data now on their mobile phone. It's just people are taking this data with them everywhere. They're no longer required to stay in one place or go to a specific expert in order to get the information that they need to be able to act for their fitness and their sports improvements. The information collected is available on the go. And whether it be through a mobile app or through a web interface, people are now accessing information that they didn't used to have access to. And that brings potential, it brings challenges. And I'd like to talk to a few examples later on as to what we see as being the potential as a result of having all that information on the go. But the important thing is that from our understanding, from a sport-specific positioning, there are certain points of information that you're going to need to have to be able to act upon them. So with that in mind, I want to move on to talking a little bit about the next experience and where we see things going from our side. So every fitness athlete is unique. I don't think anybody can question that. There are high schoolers, people that may be taking part in a contestant TV show. There are people that are trying to train to be the state champions. There are 5K finishers, and there are just aspiring pros. Every one of these people is individual, and every one of them requires individual training recommendations. They are not the same from top to bottom, whether it be that you play in a different sport and a different position. It may be your height, your weight, your gender. Those differences are what's relevant when it comes to providing people with the tools, the recommendation, and the coaching that they need to get from A to B. And this is still something, to some extent, when you look back at the limitation slide, technology overlooks this in many cases. We give people a solution that is not personal enough for them to develop from where they are today to where they want to be. And it's a critical component that is often overlooked. Another element of that is obviously how do people train? What is the mentality towards training? If you look at an elite athlete has all the information, the advice that they need in the world. If you take some of the Premier League footballers, they've got more coaches than they have relatives. They've got fitness coaches, they've got sleep coaches, they've got people that tell them where they need to be, they've got PR, they've got agents, they've got all these people around them giving them that advice. But in many cases in our world, that doesn't resonate down to the consumer. And from an Adidas perspective, we've spent so much time learning from our elite assets, from the teams and these individuals, that we feel there is a significant opportunity to bring that same advice down to the consumer level. But you have to have that appreciation of everybody being unique, and you also have to have the appreciation of the technologies that are available and how they can allow you to provide people with coaching information. One of the things that I want to touch upon very briefly, but want to go into a little bit more detail, is that it's not about training as hard as you can. And it still amazes me after 15 years of working in the fitness sports industry, how many times I can go and find videos or information about people recommending that you've got to go as hard as you can, or you might as well just give up. Yeah, you will eventually give up, because eventually you're going to hurt yourself to the point of not wanting to do it anymore. And I think this is an area where I think there's some discussions later on with regards to kids and fitness and kids. We need to get the mentality in at the early ages with these people as well. There's a lot of kids that want to be involved in sport, but are scared of being involved because it's just too hard for them. It's not individual. It doesn't focus on who they are and what are their specific needs. And I think that there is still an opportunity through coaching and advice to bring that down to the kids at the early ages, so that they then develop through their life, understanding that it's not always just purely about training hard. So one critical factor in all of this and being able to understand how to coach people, how to take them forward, is then determining what is the right level of training. And if you relate back to the earlier slide with some of the product examples, so the pedometer or the heart rate monitor, those products in their own way give some element of information. A pedometer tells you what your body is doing to some extent, how many movements your body is doing. A heart rate monitor will give you an overview of exertion in time. But individually, they lack that complete picture that we believe is required to be able to deliver that coaching for successful achievement of the right training level. So let's look at activity. And let's take an example that's on the screen. So I understand Julie, Peter, and Joel are the people that have been involved in this. So this is just a theoretical example using those guys. And here you can look at their activity over a period of time from an activity monitor pedometer perspective, let's say. A very simple, basic product. And it's told them that they've all done 10,000 steps in a week. If you were to look at that from a cardio perspective, you start to see a slight difference. Peter has been going full on. He's been going all in at every level, and his average heart rate, maximum heart rate, has been up there in the 85% area. The others have slightly lower levels. But this itself doesn't tell the full picture about how effective or whether these people were training at the right level. It's when you start to put this information together in the one slide that you start to see the full picture. A picture that would allow us to make some recommendations, some coaching advice to these individuals. And one of them may be, I don't know, Peter, whether you're super stressed or not, but at the moment, it's looking like to achieve 10,000 steps, you're actually having to put in too much effort. And that could be stress-related, it could be due to poor condition, but therefore you can make a recommendation and coach Peter in the direction of, whoa, take it easy. You don't need to go that hard. On the other hand, Joel, Julie, we might want to step it up a bit, or they might be finding the right balance. But, sorry. I don't know what your schedule's looking like. We'll come back to some later. But the point is that when you put these two pieces of information together, you find the balance that allows you to make these coaching recommendations. And this is the thing that we find with working with our athletes, with our coaches, and the individuals that we work with. So, from there, how do we focus on bringing wearable technology to sport? That's brought to sport through the Adidas MyCoach digital platform. It's a set of interactive training tools that are there to help people of all levels, be it the pros or be it the beginners, to get from wherever they are today and wherever they want to be. It's about getting from A to B and not falling off in the middle. It was the original premise as to why MyCoach was created. Research has over and over again shown us that people know where they are. Some people don't actually even know that, but the majority of people don't know what to do with the next step. And they go off and do the next step, it's the wrong step, and then they fall off, and then they're back to square one, and I don't want to do this again. We need to try and work in a way whereby we're not trying to rescue people that have fell off the wagon, that we're getting people to start on the wagon in the right way, and then drive them to success, which they can continue to iterate upon, so that their journey is not just A to B, it goes all the way through the alphabet. But we won't be able to achieve that if we don't understand the uniqueness of individuals and get a better understanding of what they're doing in their training. From a MyCoach perspective, our business is segregated into consumer and elite team system business. And when you look at our consumer solutions, you can see that we have running and training-oriented, running and fitness-orientated products, and then we have what we call training for sport. On your left-hand side there, the MyCoach Smart Run, we'll find out a little bit more about that later on in another presentation. A running device that brings together heart rate, GPS technology, all into one wrist-based product for runners. It's a product that is able to tell you about your activity level in terms of speed and distance, but it also brings in that cardio piece. It's a product that is so advanced that we can actually deliver real-time coaching to you there and then during every workout to make sure that every one of your minutes working out is as effective as possible. When it comes to training for sport, and you've got the court sports and the field sports, people playing basketball, tennis, or football, American football, soccer, you have SpeedCell and XL. SpeedCell and XL, albeit at this stage two separate devices, the complete picture they provide is an overview of exertion on the field or on the court. They also then link that through to heart rate. So the XL itself is a heart rate monitor, but it also measures acceleration, it measures G-force. And therefore, we can tell you how quickly you're accelerating forwards, backwards, sideways, and also vertically. So we get an understanding of your game and training load. Speed and distance comes from the SpeedCell, which is a foot-based accelerometer, but together, those two pieces of technology are providing an overview of sports, court and field sports, that has never been done for the base level consumer. So we have running fitness products, we have then the training for sports products. The sensor apparel is an extension of our range. Obviously, we are a footwear and apparel brand. We have expertise in the apparel world, and by using apparel, we can make usage of products a lot simpler and easier and more comfortable, doing away with excessive straps and making it a part of your regime. And then we have applications. In this case, this is just an example from SpeedCell and XL, whether it be a web-based application or a mobile application that's bringing the data to the user in an understandable, presentable way, but is then linked through to that element of what is next, what is coaching, and what does coaching mean for you as an asset. When it comes to MyCoach Elite, this is where we start to get into the realms of fantasy for most of us and most of our bank balances. This is talking about a system that is used by the best of the best My German friends would like me to say the German national team, Real Madrid, AC Milan, Chelsea, and then the whole MLS are using this system today. And what this is bringing sports monitoring data off the field of play, off the field of practice, right into the hands of the coach. We have a tech-fit compression garment, which is measuring heart rate, and feeding that into a player cell, which is positioned on the back of the garment. That player cell is also monitoring your performance from a speed and distance and acceleration perspective. It feeds it directly back to the coach at the sideline. So the coach can then make real-time conclusions about whether there's somebody on the pitch that shouldn't be on the pitch or whether there's somebody that should be working harder. You can go into a deeper dive of web analytics to post-training session or post-game to understand a lot more about what is happening with each of his players. This is a tool that is definitely giving that heart rate, that activity balance, and making it easy for the coach to understand what he's got to do with his prize assets. And we'll get to an example of that, a concrete example from the European football team a little bit later. This is just an overview of how the sensor tech has moved on and what is actually in the elite team system player cell. A GPS, it's got a heart rate sensor, magnetometer, accelerometer, and gyro, and it's capturing data at 100 hertz. That's a massive amount of data that's being processed and giving us information about what those players are doing and how we can then drive them in the right direction. But not wanting to forget that every athlete is unique, and I think the team system, the elite team system is a good way of highlighting that. You've got different players in different positions, and a coach should know that when he's looking at all the information he's got, that he's got somebody that's playing as a winger or he's got somebody playing as a fullback. These people do not need the same training regime. And they will not have one if it's an intelligent coach, because most of the time they will spend their life going through their own regime of training. From time to time, yes, they will as a group practice on the field of play tactically, but if it's done right individually, then each one of these individuals should be getting a training plan that is specific to their needs and their requirements. So let's have a look at a more detailed example. I hope you can see this. This is something from, this is building upon the earlier example of Peter, Joel, and Julie. And what we have there on your right-hand side is a screen capture of data taken from an elite team training session, a European team that's using our team system. We'll try the magic of this. So we have two players that's been highlighted. We have here player number 512 and here player number 127. And the important thing to highlight here is that these blue bars are showing workload. These guys over here aren't lazy, they're goalkeepers. This guy over here is the guy that's done the most work. What you see halfway down here, though, is this little red dot, not my red dot, but the other red dot, is his heart rate in relation to that workload. So what we get here from this picture is an overview of the work he's put in and the amount of effort he's had to go with it. If you look in the middle section, you've got 127, this player here. Not got a great result, okay, his middle ground, but you can see his heart rate is actually gone above his workload bar. And what that's saying is that that guy has had to put in way too much effort to get the workload out of that training session. What does the coach do? He needs to tell him to calm down. He needs to tell him to take a day off, take 2 days off, take a little bit of a rest because you're going to overtrain. And in this specific case, that was it. The coach was able to go to player 127 and say, look, we need to pull you out, you need to sit down for a little bit because you're going to end up injuring yourself. And this is a concrete example of an elite scenario that allows us to learn what we need to gather from individuals in order to provide them with the coaching experience that will help them develop as fitness or sports enthusiasts. This is concrete in-use examples, and it just proves to us that the information we're collecting is the right kind of information, but we need to be able to recommend to people how they then act upon that. So the new expectation, and certainly from our perspective as a sporting goods company, with our history embedded, heritage embedded in sports, we will focus on individualized coaching based on how your body is responding to exercise. And that's the relationship between the two, the workload and the effort that you need to put in there. Because only with those two can we actually truly say to somebody, we know what your next step is. Because everything else is too ambiguous. You don't have enough. Again, every athlete is unique. There's the basketball high school player, there's the elite team AC Milan. Each one of them needs their own training session. And we need to be able to understand their individual needs. We can't ask all of the kids of the different heights, different physiologies, different shapes, different weights, different positions. We can't ask them all to do the same amount of suicide drills day and day again, because it literally is becoming suicide for the individuals that can't cope with that. Okay? And in wrapping up, what I just want to bring out, the key points from the presentation. From pros to beginner, everybody can benefit from expert advice. And I think one area we need to focus on as an industry, in our business certainly, is being able to give people contextual information that is easy for them to understand, it's easy for them to interpret, and it's actually easy for them to act upon. Because if it's not something they can act upon, they're not going to get to that next step, and they're just going to fall off the wagon again. Heart rate and activity has proved in our work with elite athletes, with teams, with athletes of all levels, that those two things together are something we can focus on to provide that coaching. It gives us an understanding of how a unique body, that individual, is responding, and it gives us the information we require to be able to recommend what they're going to do in the next steps of their training regime. Devices should just measure you, not just what you do. And that's pretty important considering the space that's out there at the moment. And I don't want this to be taken in a negative way, but I think there's an opportunity with what's being built at the moment to take that to the next level. Because some of it is a little bit ambiguous and doesn't go far enough to be able to provide people with that next step. That doesn't mean that it's a bad starting point, but if we really want to go to that next level of saying, right, I can tell you what you need to do next, then we need to have that greater understanding of what the body is doing. And I think here it's important to also point out that the method in which you give that coaching, or the methods in which we give that advice, are also something that we need to focus on and need to become less invasive. Because the one thing I don't want people to leave here with this room is that we're talking about coaching, we're going to force everybody into a 20-week training regime, everybody's got to do every one of the workouts, otherwise they're absolute failure. We need to develop training tools that live and move with the information we're collecting, because from day-to-day scenarios change. People have less time, or people do have the flu, or people have been tired because they've spent 12 hours sitting in an airplane flying from one side of the world to the other. You've got to be able to provide things in a way that's less invasive to the athlete and their specific needs. That also applies to hardware. And while it's a little bit more difficult from the hardware side because you're always waiting for the technology to catch up, I think there is an important thing to focus on there, in that we need to be able to drive the products we're expecting people to use in a direction that is comfortable for them to use it. Not that it's an anomaly. It has to be something that they're happy to be a part of their habits. And that's ultimately something that will then make the coaching a lot more successful itself. And then finally, it's that individualized piece, that expert training. We believe that that's the next step forward. We believe that is the key to people getting the success that they require. It's getting people the results, and it's getting it in what should be the least painful and most productive manner. So with that said, I only have one more slide left, and that says thank you very much. Hope that was useful. Look forward to speaking to more of you later in the week.
Thank you, Simon. So does anybody have any questions for Simon? You want to come up here, please? I got one over here.
Hi, Simon. Thanks. Thank you very much. My name is Lawrence Olivier. I'm somewhat from South Africa, somewhat from Atlanta.
Okay.
Question, nutrition. It seems to me that at this point in time, you guys do not focus on the nutritional component yet. I know that you're associated with athletes' performance, where nutrition is quite a big thing.
Yes.
What do you see on the radar for nutrition tracking, monitoring? And then I talk about not logging, but automatic monitoring.
At this stage, you're spot on. Our relationship with athletes' performance is obviously a key gateway to adding that to the offer. It's something we've stayed away from initially. primarily just because of a focus and the ability to manage what we've got on our table. We do know that from working with API and our elite teams that nutrition is an important component of that fueling the body. Whenever the body gets rid of something, you need to put it back. And we've started to, little by little, I would say, test the waters in that area just by providing advice that is more in general format to our users through the platform we have. I do think that, personally, I feel that the nutrition is a key relevant part of that. I mean, we're not talking about, let's say, weight management at this point in time, which it would be an absolute critical piece to be. But I think also from a sports perspective, we'll need to start and focus on that area going forward. But at this point in time, I don't have any timelines or concrete plans as to when it's going to be something that evolves over time. As we have products further along down the roadmap, we'll start to see nutrition-related recommendations becoming a more integrated part of that, but it's still to be defined as to how far we go and when we go with that. But it's relevant and important, I don't deny that.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else?
Somebody at the back, I think.
Meet me halfway, folks.
Thank you. Timmer Buchner, 7 Ventures. You mentioned Adidas is not a technology company, but what we've seen in your presentation is technology at its best. Can you explain something about, do you develop these gadgets by your own, or do you partner with other companies?
Yeah.
What is your
Sure.
statement?
I can say we are not a technology company because the business that I work in is a fraction of a giant, and Adidas is known for its footwear and apparel. Having said that, technological innovation from footwear and apparel perspective has always been a key part of the brand, and it's more of an internal scenario. If you were to be a startup outside of Adidas, I think your world would be a lot easier than being a startup within Adidas. And that's just because of the traditions and what exists from Adidas in the past. Having said that, we are internally now, we have our own hardware and software development teams in-house. Due to the scale of the operations and what we are building, we work with select partners to expand our development capabilities and resources. And we select those partners based on the project that we're working on and the expertise. Many of you will know that from Speed Cell perspective, we've worked with the Dynastream guys. Our initial version was Ant Plus, although now we've moved on to BTLE with that. We've worked with Mio in the integration of the continuous heart rate into here, but we also then had hardware development support from Finnish company called Electrobit. So depending on the scale of the project, we will pick and choose additional resources to help us. We don't have a house full of 60 mobile app developers, but we have external partners that do, have teams up to that scale to help us develop things going forward. So we focus on the expertise that is enough to manage the development, but also have expertise to create solutions, concepts that can then become something that then actually go to market through partnerships with a developer.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.